Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again tonight. Go ahead and drop in the chat where you're visiting us from. Don't be shy. I'm here in sunny Florida. Nobody? Oh, Maryland. Thanks, Mark. Oh, West Bend, Wisconsin. Oh, we got a few from Wisconsin, another from Maryland. Wonderful. Thanks for playing, everybody. Cool. I'm going to give it just another moment for people to join us, and then we're going to dig into visiting New Zealand. For those of you that are already with us, have any of you been to New Zealand? Oh, nice. Dawn's been there. Oh, Mark's been twice. Nice. Very cool. I know I plan to go after all this COVID stuff is gone. We can travel freely again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. I had a friend who lived in New Zealand years ago. Oh, Phyllis, what part of New Zealand? If you remember, just drop it in the chat. Oh, okay. Red Cross volunteer. Very cool. Very cool. All right, I'm going to share my. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Maria Stephanopoulos with Ingenious Travel, based here in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. Joining us tonight is Hayden with 100% Pure New Zealand, and he is going to be taking us shortly on a trip around New Zealand. Just share my screen here. If my computer will cooperate, here we go. And oh, I didn't mean to do that. Stop share. My computer's being all crazy on me. There we go. You'd think by now I'd be an old pro at this. All right. Welcome to tonight's virtual vacation to the beautiful islands of New Zealand. For those of you who are new to us, welcome. To give you a little bit of background about who we are, as I said, I'm Maria with Ingenious Travel. We are a group of travel agents that got together at the beginning of COVID back in April when it became very apparent that we were going to be locked down and borders would be closed for longer than 2 weeks. We wanted to offer a bit of an escape to everybody because everything was so negative on the TV. Not with us tonight, but a part of the group are Susan Schaefer with Ships and Trips Travel from Middle Tennessee, Barbara Oliver with Altogether No Travel out of Southern California, Gail Sherman with Wine Lovers Travel out of Southern California, Candace Stern, Stay Balanced Travel out of the Metro Detroit, Michigan area, and Angela Isherwood of All of the Atlas Travel Design from Lake Country, Wisconsin. So, having said that mouthful, we got together, as I said, in order to provide you guys with a bit of an escape and to inspire you for destinations that we've been told are very high on a bucket list or a place that you want to go to after we're able to travel freely. We also have started a few meetup groups, and you can find us in person once, depending on where you live. We can start meeting again, groups of larger than 5 or 6. Eat, Drink, Travel, Greater Tampa Bay, Eat, Drink, Travel, Middle Tennessee, Eat, Drink, Travel, Detroit, and Eat, Drink, Travel, Lake Country. Now, for those of you who aren't in one of those areas to meet up in person, you can find us on our Facebook group page, Take a Virtual Vacation, or the YouTube channel for any of our previously recorded sessions. I'll post these in the chat as well. All right, Having said that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to go ahead, hand it over to Hayden, and let you take it away.
All right, welcome everyone.
Really quick, I forgot to mention, any questions you have, drop them in the chat. We'll answer them at the end. It's all yours.
All right, let me know when you can see my screen there, Maria.
I'm seeing the dual screen.
All right, we don't want that, do we? 1 second. So, what about now?
Same thing.
Same thing, all right. Technical difficulties, one more time. Let me just duplicate it, should be easiest. Cool. Same screen is stopped and closed, that's not what we want either. This time.
Yeah, technology, it's great that it allows us to do this, but you know,
what about now? Are we back in?
You're good to go.
All right, that's a good start. Sorry about that. Well, thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'd like to start by saying kia ora. And kia ora, in our Indigenous language of Maori, kia ora is a greeting, it's a welcome, but literally translated, it means to be well. So wishing you and all your loved ones well at this crazy time. And it's so good to see all of you continuing to dream about future travels down to our beautiful part of the world. It would be remiss of me not to start by just giving you a little bit of update about where New Zealand's at with regards to their management of COVID and just some of the barriers that are currently in place. So New Zealand very quickly made the very big decision to close their borders pretty quickly after this COVID pandemic hit, which has been great and wonderful for New Zealanders that are living there. I think in total we've had less than 2,000 cases in the whole country. Around 25 casualties in total, but at the moment there has been no new cases for 5 days. They've been out of lockdown, they've had all sorts of freedoms. There's no social distancing, no mask wearing, but the one big thing that is missing at present is our international visitors. And tourism is our #1 export market. It's incredibly important to New Zealand and New Zealanders for sharing ideas with the world, having you come down and experience our world, and for employment in New Zealand. So they've been fairly hard hit at this point in time, relying on domestic tourism while those borders are closed. But we're going to use today, so I may as well let you know that I'm not sure at this point. I don't have the crystal ball to let you know when our borders will exactly reopen as yet. But we're going to use today to continue to dream, start thinking about the future, what New Zealand looks like, getting down to these wide open places, seeing these beautiful New Zealanders, and going back to the experiences of travel that we've all missed. So why New Zealand? This is a great one. When we're talking to Maria and the travel advisors, a predominant part of my role based here in North America is to work with the travel advisor industry to make sure they're most versed to personalize that New Zealand experience for you. So by working with Maria or one of the other advisors she put up on the screen before, what they can do is really personalize that New Zealand experience. They can come out, reach out to you, ask what you want, what are your special interest activities, and we're going to touch on many of them today. But New Zealand's a very small country. We're only 1,000 miles from top to bottom. We just ticked over a population of 5 million people, and very easy to get around. So there's some of the barriers that we're going to go through on the presentation. And as Maria said, I don't want this to be a one-way conversation. I don't want to feel like you're being talked at. So please do use that chat box throughout. We will consolidate all of those questions at the end, and we're here to answer all those and shape the presentation a little bit towards what each of you wants to know. So a big rationale, what people are dreaming about when we're talking to consumers, particularly here in North America, is getting away from it all, traveling with those loved ones and getting to these wide open spaces. And one of the large appeals, we have a wide range of accommodation in New Zealand, but one of the large appeals is getting into these small boutique, beautiful lodge accommodations, feeling like those, you've got access to the beautiful landscapes all around you, the fresh food, the fresh produce, beautiful personalized activities. So we talk about lodges and landscapes. And landscapes is one of those things you'll see come up through the presentation today. As I said, we're only that 1,000 miles from top to bottom. You're never more than about 90 minutes from the coastline. But in that space, we go from golden sand beaches through to geothermal plateaus, to beautiful patchwork farmlands, to amazing wine regions, to this huge mountain range, and finish with glacial carved fiords. So these landscapes are a huge part of that New Zealand experience, and finding your way to get out and experience them. I thought about changing the branding on the slide from embracing people, because it's something that we're told to physically not do at the moment, but I think it's something that we all are looking forward to being able to do again. And embracing people in this instance doesn't necessarily mean physically, it's humanely. So in New Zealand, we have a beautiful Maori word, which is manakitanga. And manakitanga refers to this beautiful, warm, welcoming feeling you get from New Zealanders. As New Zealanders, we just love learning about the rest of the world. We're very inquisitive. So we love having tourists come down. As much as we want to know about you, where you're from, who you are, we want to share our stories and showcase our backyard in a way that's personalized to you. So a huge part of any New Zealand experience. I talked about these beautiful changeable landscapes. Hopefully now, when you've all been in some form of lockdown potentially, you can look at an image like this, sitting next to a glacial fed lake up in the mountains of Fiords, which is on the lower west coast of the South Island, helicopter access only, and just detaching from all of those, everything around you, pulling out the phone, capturing a couple of images, but enjoying a great bottle of New Zealand wine, some amazing New Zealand beer, having your pilot showcase these beautiful parts of the country just to you. And during this time, we've been kind of thinking, how can we keep the dream of New Zealand alive? So I'm just going to push play on a little video. The ideology behind this is the New Zealanders down there are missing international visitors. So what we've done is put together a little bit of a campaign, and it's called Messages to the World. And this one here focuses just on some really authentic New Zealanders' favourite places.
This is a message from New Zealand.
Where's my favourite place in New Zealand?
I'm not good with favourites.
Stewart Island.
Rotorua.
Berg Burger because they feed me.
This place right here.
Tahu!
My favourite place is Matawai. Nā te mea ko tērā tōku tūranga waiwai.
The Whanganui River, when it hits the ocean at Castle Cliff.
My favourite place in New Zealand is in the shower, because I think when I'm in the shower, that's when the best ideas occur.
I've had the best surf of my life in Kaikoura.
I love that place.
You can be in the ocean surfing while looking at the mountains.
The Waitakere Ranges, getting out in the bush in the solitude.
Castle Point, it's a beautiful beach in the Wairarapa.
Definitely the West Coast.
Right here.
Right here.
Oh, it'd have to be around here.
Queenstown.
Everywhere in New Zealand.
Scenery is so good you can just about reach out and touch it.
So that's just a little teaser, hopefully makes you want to get down there and show you these friendly, warm, welcoming Kiwis who are looking forward to showing you around. Obviously the pre-COVID, like one of the biggest barriers, I guess, when we're talking to consumers is how do you get to New Zealand? We know there's a whole heap of people that want to go. The first barrier is how do you get there and how far it is away. So this map's just designed to show you what we were looking forward to in a pre-COVID world. This was supposed to be the year for North America, where we were going to launch new flight connectivity with a new flight out of Newark with Air New Zealand, new flight out of Dallas into Auckland with American Airlines, and a new flight out of LA direct into the South Island, into Christchurch for the first time in about 15 years. At this point, we're not exactly sure what that airlift is going to look like in a post-COVID world, but in positive news, Air New Zealand, our national flagship carrier, continues to fly a daily service out of Los Angeles into Auckland and a 3-day-a-week service out of San Francisco. At the moment, that is purely for repatriation purposes and continue the all-important trade route between the two countries. However, by continuing that, it means it's much easier to restart it, and we are hopeful that they'll reinvest in these other routes as things come back to normal. The next barrier we see when we're talking to consumers like yourself, they've got this pent-up demand. They want to come down to New Zealand, but we're kind of this funny shaped country down there in the bottom of the South Pacific. So they're thinking, I want to go there, but then how do I get around? So this one here just shows you Air New Zealand's domestic network. So if you can look at the top of the picture to the largest print there of Auckland. Auckland is our largest city by far. As I said, just under 5 million people, of which about 1.5 million live in the greater Auckland area. This is, at the moment, the only North American connectivity. So all North American connectivity comes into Auckland. So this is where you will ordinarily start and finish your stay. But just to give you an idea of the ease of getting around, if you look at the blue line on the left-hand side of the screen, Auckland down to Queenstown, that's actually the longest flight in the country, and it's just under 2 hours. But because of the nature and shape of the country, like I said, you can't drive through a volcano or over a glacier. So it's about taking time. So the third biggest barrier we see is how much time do I need to go to New Zealand? And we know North Americans don't necessarily have the luxury of time off like other people in the world. But what we have seen is the average stay days increase up and up over the last few years. So I've been up here in this role for about 4 years. When I began, the average North American stay in New Zealand was about 10 days, which is pretty good considering some of the leave policies here in the US. But that's gone up now to just over 12. So for a very small country, I think that hopes to give you an idea of how much there is to see and do. But let's look further at how you can get around, because it's a big part of the journey to get out there, experience those landscapes for yourself, meet these unique New Zealanders. Driving in New Zealand, yes, I didn't Photoshop that. We do drive on the other side of the road. Just to correct you, it's not the wrong side, it's just the other side, sometimes known as the left. And yeah, it does take a little bit of getting used to, but we know that, and we want to ensure that you are safe and feel comfortable if you do choose to drive, whether that's a vehicle, a van, an electric vehicle, right up to a camper, as we see in the picture here. So we have some great resources that the advisors are able to share with you before you go, just to make sure you're proactive, sorry, rather than reactive. So when you come to a roundabout for the first time, it's confusing enough here for me on the other side of the road, or if you were to see livestock on the road, which is an actual reality in New Zealand, or maybe you come across one out about infamous one-way bridges. So we've got some great little fun videos before you go, just to ensure the driving doesn't end in an ended relationship from the yelling at the driver, that you both feel safe and that our New Zealanders feel safe as well. As you saw, we're an island country made up of the 3 major islands, aptly named North Island, South Island. The little one off the bottom there is Stewart Island. And I often get asked, how do you get between the two? Well, my favourite way, I grew up in a little town called Picton, which is in the top of the South Island and connects to Wellington, our capital city, by one of these, which is an inter-island ferry. So the trip itself takes about 3 hours and 20 minutes, 3.5 hours. And the last or first part of the trip, depending which way you're going, goes through the beautiful Marlborough Sounds. So a great way to get between the two. If you don't have the time or you don't want ferry travel, it's only about a 25-minute flight from Wellington across to Blenheim. So up and down, nice and easy. Another favourite way to get around for our beautiful North American visitors is by train. So we have some fantastic New Zealand rail journeys. We have the Coastal Pacific, which runs from Picton all the way to Christchurch and goes through the beautiful Kaikoura, which is known for its wonderful whales and wildlife. And then the Transalpine, which is a spectacular adventure which goes from Christchurch across the South Island, the whole width of it, into the west coast there, and goes up through the alpine environment, through tunnels and amazing changeable landscapes. I think one of the things I personally will be dreaming about, and from our research with Americans and Canadians is the same, is to get away and just feel in these big outdoor spaces, but feel safe in doing it. And that's an important thing for us in New Zealand, making sure that you feel comfortable. So we have wonderful walking and hiking. We seem to just call it going for a walk here. You might call it a hike. And we have everything from a short walk out to a waterfall. Maybe you pull the car to the side of the road, right up to what we have, the Te Araroa Trail, which is a walking network which connects the whole length of New Zealand, not dissimilar to, say, the Appalachian Trail. And within that, or separate to that, actually, we have now 10 great walks. So these are 3 to 4 day walks, which you can choose to do self-guided or fully guided, to the point where someone will take your heavy pack in front of you. Once you finish your day's walking, you can enjoy a beautiful food, kai, I was going to say, which is Maori for food, and a beautiful glass of wine and a hot shower, which is most people's perfect form of hiking. Same for those whose special interest might be cycling. We've got now 22 great rides in New Zealand, and to all levels. And I think, as we've all seen, the introduction of e-bike technology means that some of these rides that maybe didn't fit your fitness level can be accessible to most people. So a great way to get out, feel like you're away from the ball, and experience all these changeable landscapes. I just wanted to touch on a few experiences as well. Some places, some that might get you dreaming. So imagine sitting in this helicopter, or even just down in one of these boats. So this is the world famous Milford Sound. which is one of 14 fiords, which sits in the lower part of the South Island. And as you can see from the shape of the mountains, not dissimilar to Norway, glaciers come and rip the whole way through this big V-shaped valley and left these really steep mountains coming straight out of the ocean. So although it looks good on a day like this, where it's beautiful and clear, I actually worked down here in Milford Sound after university, and it was almost favourite to me when it was pouring with rain, just because of the steepness of these cliffs. You just literally had thousands of waterfalls appearing and dumping into the fjord. Those of you that are fishermen, it's always been a dream, I think, for many people, particularly freshwater fishermen, but saltwater as well. New Zealand's on that bucket list. People want to come down, stand in our gin clear waters and do sight fishing for brown trout, rainbow trout and salmon. And looking at these landscapes, I don't think it even matters too much if you catch that record brown trout to bring home, or sorry, to take the photo of to bring home. It's more so just being out in these environments, particularly post-lockdown. I saw Maria had put a very beautiful background there with a picture of Hobbiton. So you'll see a lot of film tourism in New Zealand. The most well-known, obviously, we became what was called the real Middle Earth. And this still, particularly for first-time visitors, can be a huge motivator. Those that fell in love with Tolkien's books or movies have the opportunity to go and experience the movie set itself, a living movie set in Hobbiton. Go and have the feast in the Green Dragon, the pub, have the beer that they brew on site, or through the country you can do lots of different beautiful location tours as well. Amazon at the moment has bought the rights to Lord of the Rings series, so we'll get another big second dip at what that looks like once that all comes to air. But once again, a big spend, Amazon only spectacular, which will reignite that love for Middle Earth, which is now associated with New Zealand. Experiencing Maori culture. This is really important to us. Maori are what we call the tangata whenua, which means the indigenous people of New Zealand. And so it's really important for us. They are very assimilated into New Zealand culture, and it's a really warm, welcoming culture. Obviously, when you see things like the haka, our Maori war dance for the first time, it can be seen as intimidating, but I think it's a great way for visitors to come down, understand it, and per the photo here, participate, feel it one, hear their stories and their unique experiences, whether it be visiting a marae, which is the picture here, Wharenui, which is the meeting house, or going for a kayak trip to see some of the Maori carvings. I mentioned Milford Sound already. I think in a post-COVID world, people might be a little bit conscious about the style of travel they want to do. Some of that larger group touring may not be as favourable to some. Hopefully it's not something we have to be as concerned about given our management of COVID today. But for those of you that are in that boat, it's just a reminder here that you have the opportunity to, say, jump on a helicopter, fly into Milford, have this boat to yourself or to very few others. If you look closely next to the helicopter, you can see a jacuzzi on the top deck. These guys actually put crayfish pots down, so you would call crayfish spiny rock lobster. So you can have fresh rock lobster cooked on the back of this boat, have access to the helicopter, go up and land on a glacier, have a bottle of wine on the way back to Queenstown, Wanaka or Te Anau. I think many of you, myself included, have used this time to probably focus on your own health and well-being where possible. And we want to ensure that that's available when you go down and have unique traveling experiences. So throughout New Zealand, we have a wide range of beautiful wellness retreats. This photo is one that I think, you want to send home to friends and colleagues saying, I'm on top of a mountain with my yoga instructor, holding their ultimate pose and taking in the fresh air. And our wellness retreats in New Zealand aren't necessarily all green juice and yoga. They're more about using that natural landscape to feel at one with nature, to get a really good balance and come away feeling better than you did when you entered. Golf. Golf is a huge driver for New Zealand. It was not supposed to be a pun. Motivator for New Zealand. We think we have about, I think the second most golf courses per capita out of anywhere in the world. I think only behind Scotland these days, maybe Iceland based on population. Wonderful world-class experiences, and anything from 3 of our courses that are in the top 50 in the world down to really localized courses where you literally have to shoo the sheep off the green to be able to get to your ball. And then this one we look at is ecotourism, where you get access to a helicopter to fly to a helicopter access only golf hole. That view in the background is of Queenstown, our premier resort town, and that's the ultimate picture to send home. This isn't all about helicopters, and it wasn't supposed to be a luxury only focused presentation. I hope you're not all sitting there wondering about the budgets associated with this, although helicopters are really popular in New Zealand, especially for visitors, just because of the nature of our landscapes. Getting from A to B does take time, and utilizing a helicopter shows that terrain from above. It also gives you access to places off the beaten track. So a huge motivator, I know, for many of you is New Zealand wine. Hopefully many of you have finished for the day. Maybe you've even got a glass of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc in the fridge or sitting next to you that you'll feel motivated to go out and enjoy after this. But this wine map's just designed to show that we have a wide range of terroir through New Zealand. And so although Marlborough region, which is where I grew up, has made us New Zealand world famous for our Sauvignon Blancs, based on our changeable landscapes, we have a huge range of varietals. So if you're up in the north, in Northland, you're going to get more Chardonnays. As you make your way down into central Otagos, you're going to have rockier, colder climates and have beautiful full-bodied Pinot Noirs. And then in between, you're going to have a range of French blends, Gewürztraminer, and everything in between. So yeah, in most of these wine experiences, you'll have a very personalized, very welcoming cellar doors where you can pull up and have the opportunity to actually talk to the winemaker, walk around the vineyard with them, and have that really localized experience. And what does our food look like? I know it's a huge motivator these days when anyone travels to take that Instagram photo and send it home to make them jealous. Well, we have a wide range in New Zealand. As I touched on, you're never more than, say, a 90-minute drive from our coast. So as such, we have beautiful kai moana. Kai moana, kai meaning food and moana meaning water or seawater, so food from the water. So you'll see fish and chips is very popular, and people laugh at our accent and how we say it. Fresh shellfish, beautiful New Zealand lamb. Maria was noting that, yeah, with some Greek influence there, she grew up with lamb and is looking forward to trying our New Zealand lamb. And it's a taste and flavour that I definitely missed. I touched on crayfish and kai koura, so kai meaning food, koura meaning crayfish. So it's the one place you should eat it. It's not all seafood. If you see the picture here on the left-hand side, this is pronounced, you'll see it written at the bottom there, as hangi. So hangi is a traditional Maori way of eating food, or preparing food, I should say. So it is cooked in an earthen oven. So traditionally, you would actually dig a hole, heat the rocks, put down the food, put the rocks on the top as a way to cook the food slowly over 3 to 6 hours, put the dirt back on top, and then come back and enjoy it. And it's a part of a really cool Maori concept, which is kōrero and kai. So kōrero refers to conversation, kai refers to food. So putting down this long cooking food gives you a chance to engage with your hosts, learn about them, learn about the culture, and then have a shared meal. In this particular photo here, I just realized it's one of my colleagues who's now joined us at Tourism New Zealand, who's our talent in the background. But this is actually at Te Puia, which is in our geothermal area of Rotorua. And this is where they've actually used the steam from the geothermal area to cook this food for the visitors in the photo. And accommodation, we have a huge wide array of accommodation. So it doesn't matter what your budget is. You can do anything from tent camping through the country to jumping in one of the campers you saw earlier, to 2 to 3 star B&Bs where you can meet the locals who can show you around, right the way up to some of the world's very best luxury lodges. But I thought today I'd just include a couple of these wow properties as a good way to keep you dreaming. So first one is the lodge at Cody Cliffs. So this is up in Northland. I probably should have included more maps here, but right at the top, if you remember where Auckland was on the map, if you'd go north of Auckland, you're going up into Northland in the beautiful Bay of Islands. So this is one of the Robertson properties. And the nice thing about this one, it only had 22 rooms. They've just built 3 new 4-bedroom family villas, so which is going to appeal in a post-COVID world where people want to be in their bubble but have access to all of these facilities, which includes a top 50 golf course and multiple private beaches. Treetops Lodge and Estate, this one is in Rotorua, so in the central North Island. As you can see, it's tucked away there in a beautiful native New Zealand native bush, and the accommodation's hidden away. This is the main lodge itself. You can't actually see the roofs of the accommodation there. One of my special, most favorite experiences that these guys offer is you can actually go foraging with a Maori guide. So the Maori guide will take you out here. You can, for example, collect the leaves off some of these native bush called the kawakawa and have those steeped to make a sleepy tea to make you feel at one with nature and the environment that evening. Another special one, this one not far from where I grew up in Picton, the Mulga Sounds, the Bay of Many Coves Resort. What's unique about this one is there is no road access. So the majority of people come into the jetty or wharf you see there on a boat. Another spectacular option, they can come in via seaplane and land right in the bay there. But once again, I think the seclusion is what's going to appeal to people in a post-COVID world. Getting away from it all, these guys are right on one of the famous walking tracks, the Queen Charlotte track that goes all the way through the Mulga Sounds. So you can go out and do a guided or self-guided walk. You can stand up paddle down the bottom there. And I've had a day where I was, as a child actually, before it looked like this, standing on that jetty down there and had orca, so killer whales or orca come into this bay, feeding on the stingrays as we stood on the wall. Another interesting one for those of you thinking maybe traveling with a family or want to fulfill a childhood fantasy of staying in a treehouse, Hapuku Lodge and Treehouse is there in Kaikoura. So if you were looking out from the front of these tree houses, you'd actually be looking out to the ocean on the east coast of the upper South Island. And as you can see right behind you, we have the Seaward Kaikoura Ranges. They sit in the native Kānuka grove. Kānuka is famous for the Kānuka and Manuka for the Manuka honey. And these guys are actually on a venison farm. So they have deer that they farm. So not only are you in this tree house with this beautiful backdrop, you've got access to this beautiful farm experience as well. So you're all sitting there thinking, all right, I want to go to New Zealand, but when's the best time? I admit I can probably be a little bit biased, but it's always a good time to go to New Zealand. But just to give you some awareness, prior to COVID hitting, our summer months in New Zealand start in probably December and go through to about March. That's when it's warmest, but that's also when it was busiest, not just with visitors from North America, but from around the world. So what we were seeing is a lot of people come around down in those shoulder seasons, which is some of my favorite. This image here for me would be probably September, October. So in the South Island, you can still see the remnants of the snow up there on the mountains, yet the wildflowers, the lupins are in full bloom. But as you can see, the visitors here, they're managing to be in shorts and t-shirts, be active, out on the bike. Yes, it might start getting a little bit cooler in the evenings, but that's just a good excuse for a Pinot Noir by the fire. So yeah, great year-round activities. And one last thing I'd like to touch on, hopefully you guys are still putting stuff in the chat box. I can't see it in the current presentation mode I have, but it's Tiaki. And Tiaki is an initiative that we put in about 18 months ago now, and we hear all these people talking about sustainability and just an awareness of sustainability when they go to a destination. Tiaki means to care for people and place in Māori, and we don't want to talk about sustainability, we want to talk about enrichment. For us, sustainability, to sustain is to keep something the same. We want your visit to New Zealand to not only enrich you, but also enrich New Zealanders. So there is a Māori understanding of being kaitiaki. So kaitiaki means guardians, guardians of the land, and that they are only there for a finite period of time. And during that time, it is their role to make New Zealand a better place for them and for future generations. And one of the ways that we can do that is through the growth of international tourism, having people coming down, sharing our cultures and sharing our ideas. However, when they do that, we want to make sure that you're traveling safely and that you're respecting the local culture with an open heart, an open mind. You're looking after the nature, you're keeping it clean, you're driving safely, and that we all leave a better place based on your experience. So just some really simple things to think about and to stand by before you go. It's just one of those things you can say you've taken the Te Aki promise and shared it on social media, just to show that you are a conscious traveller and you're not just going there to take the picture and get the t-shirt, but to really immerse yourself in what New Zealand has to offer. So that was New Zealand 101 in a nutshell, probably with a really strong New Zealand accent, and probably hopefully some really good questions around. Yeah, I very much brushed the surface, but as I said, I wanted this to be a two-way conversation. So I try to allow plenty of time for us to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you so much, Hayden, for doing that for us. If you wanted to go ahead, stop share, we can do it like the Q&A kind of thing, kind of like we talked about earlier. There you go.
Perfect.
Angela was able to join us.
Good news,
So,
Angela.
Glad she was able to make it. So there were a few questions that came in. One you kind of already answered about the weather difference between the North and the South Island.
Yeah, I can touch on it a little bit further, just because of geography. Just think it's the opposite from here, and it keeps throwing me off because we're on the other side of the world. So as you go further north, it's a lot warmer. So Northland, for example, is what we call the winterless north. So people in the colder months, even New Zealanders, will escape to Northland. And it's known for its outdoor beach-based activities, diving, fishing, outdoors, etc. The south is a lot more temperate because it's got the mountains, although we are temperate all the way around, but it never gets that cold. I lived previously in Queenstown, which is our premier resort town. Like, yeah, it's got 3 skiable mountains within 40-minute drive. But in saying that, it only ever snows on the ground maybe 2 or 3 times a season. The rest of the time, the snow stays in the alpine, so it's not going to affect your stay logistically.
Okay, and the hot springs are only on the North Island, correct?
No, we're lucky enough because of that. We have geothermal throughout New Zealand. So the main ones, or the most well-known ones, are in that geothermal plateau in the central South Island. So in Taupo and Rotorua, you have access to beautiful natural geothermal stream. But even in mid-Canterbury, so between Marlborough, so Picton and Christchurch, we have what's called Hamner Springs. And then there is even one of my favorite walks, and it's kind of a hidden gem, is out there on the west coast. And you can do a 3-hour walk up, generally in the cold, and sit in the own natural hot springs, which are no paid entrance, just out in nature. So many ways to experience them.
Oh, very fun. Okay, another question that came in was, what's the ratio of sheep to people?
Well, I don't know what it is currently. I know that's something we are known for. I think one I saw recently was probably, I don't know, I think maybe there's 30 million sheep and 5 million people, somewhere there. Yeah, and that was always our stat, right, for New Zealand. I think now it's probably how many vineyards to people is what we're more known for. But I have to remind myself, I've been lucky enough to host many travel advisors down and showcase the country so they can pass this knowledge on. And every time we stop, particularly in lambing season with the lambs skipping through the daffodils, the first they want us to slam on the brakes and take a photo. So I know it's there. You will see sheep everywhere and livestock. For me, I forget that that's a novelty.
Sure. Now, mentioning vineyards, can you talk a little bit about the Hawke's Bay area?
Yeah, Hawke's Bay is one of my can't have favorites. But the Hawke's Bay, I should have a map up. You can maybe make it out in our logo a little bit. But sitting on the far east coast where it juts out on the North Island there, we have Napier and Hastings, which is the Hawke's Bay. So Napier was flattened many years in the, I don't want to get my facts wrong here, by an earthquake, and during the Art Deco era. So really interesting, that one town got completely rebuilt from scratch in a whole Art Deco style. But that's the center point of Hawke's Bay and a pool in itself. But Hawke's Bay we call the fruit bowl of New Zealand. It has beautiful access not to just world-class wines and vineyards, but beautiful fresh fruit and produce. So great to jump on a bike for a day, go through. You can stop at roadside stalls, get fresh strawberries, apples on your way to a vineyard, to stop at a cheesery. Makes for a great day out.
Wonderful. Another question came in. What's the history of bungee jumping with New Zealand?
You've asked the right person, actually. In a previous world, was sales and marketing manager for AJ Hackett Bungee, which is the world's first commercial bungee jumping operation. So bungee jumping, although it wasn't invented in New Zealand, it's actually a practice from Vanuatu, which came from the original vine jumping. It was commercialized in New Zealand. So AJ Hackett himself, along with Henry Van Ash, saw this, got inspired to do it, and started just testing it. As we do, their whole saying is living upside down on the bottom of the world, you've got to have a sense of adventure. And so we have this real, what we call number 8 wild mentality. So they just started finding elastic, trying it in different ways, and probably risking their lives jumping off various platforms. It then got very famous on the back of a stunt where they jumped off the Eiffel Tower. But then in 1988, they went from doing this just for themselves and their own adrenaline. They saw a commercial demand. People started saying, can I give you some money to try it? Can you take a photo? Can I buy the photo? So from 1988, the Kawerau Bridge, about 20 minutes outside of Queenstown, became the home of bungee. And since then, adrenaline activities have just taken off through the country.
Very cool. Now, okay, so Napier was rebuilt because of an earthquake. Wasn't parts of Christchurch as well?
Yeah, correct. So the reason New Zealand looks like it does, we do sit on a major fault line that goes. The Christchurch one was actually unknown prior to the Christchurch earthquake. So I'm going to get my years wrong again with Christchurch earthquake, so I'm not going to quote it, but I want to say maybe 10 years ago now is the anniversary. But Christchurch is, yeah, so they had a rather large earthquake, 2 rather large earthquakes. One of which, thankfully, not a lot of human life is part of that. But what they've done in Christchurch, it's always been known as the Garden City because it's really flat and goes all the way out to the ocean. So they've had a chance to really rethink and future-proof the city. So rather than hurrying to rebuild what Christchurch used to look like, they've kind of said, what do they want it to look like in 50 and 100 years? So they've put in all these beautiful pockets of here's there's the university area, here's the arts precinct, here's the restaurants, and here's these beautiful bike paths that link them all between all of those gardens. So yeah, just to give you an example, Christchurch has really just come back to everything it could be like within the last 12 months, to the point we're going to host our major trade show in Christchurch this year was the plan prior to COVID.
Oh, wow, very cool. Okay, this question came in about driving from when you were showing the camper. So somebody who's not familiar with driving on the other side of the road, is a camper, or like, is there much of a learning curve, or should they do something more with a car first?
There's always a learning curve. Just a couple of things. Like I said, that safety, your safety when you travel to New Zealand is really important, as is the safety of other New Zealanders. I think for any of us who, me personally, have lived close to an international airport, you realise at those roundabouts, you just give everyone a little bit of extra time, particularly if they're in a camper van, because 9 times out of 10, they're an international visitor, and our rental cars are very well labelled. So New Zealanders are very respectful of that. One thing I would note is it is a 12-hour flight to New Zealand from the West Coast. So what we don't recommend is jumping off that overnight flight where you've come a long way, you've gone through customs protocols, whatever that looks like, jumping straight into a camper on the other side of the road, or you might have a divorce before you get out of the airport. So we just want to make sure you're not lucid, you've had a good night's sleep, you've had a look at where you're going, you understand the rules and regulations, and like I said, we've got lots of great tools to give you that confidence.
And then what would you recommend for a first-timer's length of stay?
Yeah, I touched on that a little bit. It all depends how much time you've got available, where you're based in the country, and how much you're prepared. But people previously had this mentality, and it's a really hard one for us to change, that if I'm going that far, I need to do New Zealand, Australia, and the South Pacific. And then they come and tell us, oh, by the way, I've only got 10 days and I want to rip my hair out because Australia is the size of North America, basically, right? So the best one to do is pick your destination, find those special points of interest, work with your travel advisor, know what personalizes it for you. What are your, based on these little special interest things, was it food, was it golf, was it wine, was it hiking, was it a combination? Find those things and maybe work backwards and try and take that extra day here and there, because like I said, the average stay days out of North America is about 12. But if you can get to that 2 weeks, you can feel like you more than scratched the surface. You got out to some of these little regional areas that maybe everyone wasn't going to, and you'll feel like you've done it well, but you still want to come back.
No, I agree. I've had to talk people off of that itinerary when they're trying to do 2 to 3 countries over there within 10 days. Like, it's not going to happen. You're not going to see enough of anything.
People do it, but then they have regrets, right? They say, I wish I'd just done it. Yeah? Sure. And then they'll go back. So it does give them that little teaser, but do one and do it well.
I totally agree. Any other questions? Please put them into the chat. Give you guys a second here to see if any more pop up. It's not looking like it. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope that you've gotten a much better idea, for those of you who have not yet visited New Zealand, on what it's going to be like to go. And once, like I said, all this COVID craziness is over, we will be planning a group trip down there. You're more than welcome to join us. Or if you want to stay away from even a crowd of up to 20, totally understandable. We can help you book that as well. Any of the travel advisors who are a part of this group are more than happy to help you. Hayden, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate the fact that you gave us that insight to the beautiful island country of New Zealand. For the rest of you, we look forward to seeing you next week. If you're able to join us, please note it is at a different time because it's election day. 8 o'clock at night, we figured would not work with people wanting to start watching poll results for the East Coast. So we will be meeting at 3 o'clock and we will be visiting Poland. If you have any other questions, again, please feel free to reach out. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.